5-hour radio show.
Charlie, tell us about where you're from and how you ended up in the media.
Okay, well, I'm from Paducah, Kentucky, born and raised here in Paducah. Graduated from high school here in Paducah and attended the old Paducah Junior College, which is now the West Kentucky Communication and Technical College. I actually started out taking pre-med courses to go into medical school. That was my desire at the time, but along the line I got sidetracked and started working at a radio station, WKYB then, a long time ago. That was the top rock station in '59. I was offered a full-time position there, and within 3 weeks, I wrote and produced commercials, and guess what? I finally was offered a full-time job there. So that's how my whole broadcasting career got off the ground.
So what was it about this line of work that really got your wheels turning? I mean, from pre-med into radio and eventually television, that seems like opposite ends of the spectrum.
Well, everyone sort of has anybody that gets into broadcasting has an ego trip that they are on. I enjoyed it very much. I enjoyed writing commercials, and I enjoyed being on the air. So that's, and I sort of still had the medical thing in the back of my mind, but I knew that I really enjoyed that, and that's where I met my wife, my lovely wife, and we got married there while we were at the radio station. In fact, some people say we spent our honeymoon in a fallout shelter, which was not really the case. We actually did have a honeymoon, but we were, during that time of the period, everyone was talking about fallout shelters and protection from atom bomb blast and so forth. So we went on a steel fallout shelter that was located on the Cardinal Point Shopping Center parking lot in Paducah, and we spent 5 days in there, and I was doing my radio show from there. So that was an experience quite a bit. But anyway, and we did not spend our honeymoon in the fallout shelter.
Did you ever have a preference between the two, radio and TV? Now you're retired now, so you can be honest.
Well, I really never thought about TV at the time that I was in radio, but we had a local TV station, obviously, WPSD, which was just granted a license. In fact, the Paxton people, the family, sold the WKYB radio station in the process of getting the TV license, because remember, a long time ago, you couldn't own two medias in the same market. So therefore, they got rid of the radio station and got involved in TV, and I did apply for a cameraman's position out there, but when they called and said, hey, you come out and get a job, I already had taken the job at the radio station, so therefore I turned that down. And that was back in 1959.
So you've done so much over your career, and I don't have time, and we just don't have time to cover everything you've done, but I would like to cover two things I find really important as well as interesting. And the first thing is I'd like to discuss your involvement with the Lions Club Telethon of Stars. Can you tell our audience what exactly the Telethon of Stars is?
Okay, back in fact, I'm at my computer right now, and I can call up the telethon from the very beginning, which started in 1957. It actually was a radio auction at that time, and they raised for the Easter Seal Center $9,808 through that auction. And that was a local telecast at that hour, actually a radio broadcast. And then it went to the TV station later on that year in '57, and I think that we had local talent at that point in time. Obviously, that was before I was involved with it. And from there, it became sort of an annual thing on the second weekend in November. And from '58 on up until last year, which would be 56 years, we've raised a total of $23.7 million.
Wow.
And this year we will go over the $24 million mark. But we've had a number of notables in the period of time the telethon began. Obviously, WPSD was an NBC affiliate, so we gathered a lot of NBC talent over those years that were MCs as well as actually appearing on the telethon. For instance, like Betty White, George DeWitt, Hugh Downs, Merv Griffith, and Bob Barker. Lots of people that people recognize, and in fact, we have 11 of those over the years of the people that are deceased that actually were on the telethon. So, anyway, it's been a great run, and it obviously went from the TV station down to the showroom at the Executive Inn, and then from there it went to the Expo Center, and ultimately went to the Carson Center. So that's where we are right now.
What's it like at the Carson Center?
Well, we have all dressing rooms. Before at the other places, we were in, for example, at the TV station, everything was crowded into a small studio. The talent just stood around and waited for someone to call their name to be on. We had no format to speak of other than, in fact, the list of names and the bands and the people that made donations. And we had those people come on the air, and they did their entertainment for the folks. And it was real tight. So we didn't have any dressing rooms other than just the restrooms there. So, and we had a tent outside, which we had a lot of people that visited the tent. We had the talent to go out to the tent. And believe me, in November, it got really cold. And I mean, sometimes we had to have those big blowtorch heaters, to warm the tent up. And it really didn't do a great job. But anyway, we decided at one point in time that we needed to make a move. It was offered to us when the executive inn was built to come there and be in the showroom. And so we elected to do that. And again, we had a minimum amount of dressing rooms available. And but we lacked the space we really needed. We had to actually build, in addition to the main stage, 2 other stages. So what happened is when the Expo Center was built, we decided to build 3 stages, put inside the Expo Center, and use that as our staging area. We had lots of room for camera movement, had lots of room for seats, which they had folding chairs they actually put out in the Expo Center. We did not have dressing rooms, but the executive inn was right next door, so all of the talent stayed in the executive inn. So it was just a short walk over to that area in order to have clothes change and so forth like that. So, and it's been, the Carson Center has many dressing rooms. It has a lot of facility. We still have to divide the stage into 3 sections, though, due to the fact that we have so many talents that are there. We have the donations from the bullpen, and but the seating there is more comfortable. It's a controlled atmosphere. The lighting, the sound, the quality of the show is much better than it has been over the past, just as a fact that it's a very great entertainment center.
Now the telethon's always live, correct?
The telethon is live, 15 hours.
So
starts Saturday night at 10 p.m. and goes through Sunday at 1 p.m. in the afternoon.
So now, when you're dealing with live television, that's a format in itself that can have some pretty interesting stories. Have you ever had anything super interesting happen while you were guys were filming live?
Well, not necessarily live. We have little hiccups that go along, and obviously our directors are mostly news directors and have done very little. Don Alvey, who's one of our veterans there, he is still, I think, a part of the telethon. Every year he comes back to help direct. Some of our other directors do as well. But anyway, it is one of those things where a lot of the things happen behind the scene. For example, back in the studio when the second year that I was at Channel 6 in '73, Michael Landon, and I'm sure you remember who Michael Landon was, with Bonanza and lots of other great movies that he made, too.
Little House on the Prairie.
Little House on the Prairie, you got that. We even had some of the kids there from Little House on the Prairie. So what happened was I was in the tape room, and Michael was back there watching the kids' show, which used to be live in the studio with Dorothy Olson. And these were children that were handicapped, and there were lots of that could not speak, that couldn't walk. And Michael Landon was in the tape room, and I was back there with him and his wife. And Michael had tears in his eyes. He was actually crying when he was watching the video of these children. And it's sort of a moving thing when you see a guy that you classify as a rough and tumble cowboy, and back there actually being sentimental and emotional over these kids.
Yeah, I bet that was a sight to see.
Yeah, some of the other things, for example, that I think people, behind the scenes, a lot of things happen. For example, Pam Phillips was on our show one year as a headliner, and unfortunately, she was in Branson, Missouri. In Branson, Missouri. And we had to get her there because she was playing Branson, Missouri on a Saturday afternoon, and obviously the telethon starts at 10 p.m. on Saturday evening. So the Crowns Corporation provided us their jet, and we went out there and picked her up in Branson. Now, this was a night when it was very stormy, and the late Adrian Roof was one of the Lions that was an escort for Pam, And they went out there to pick Pam up. And coming back, I think that everybody had white knuckles because it was quite a trip, I understand, coming back from Branson, Missouri with storms everywhere. But she did make it back, and I think everyone was very happy that they did and didn't have any issues because it was a rough trip, believe me. So a lot of talk about that.
Well, how and when can people watch and donate to this year's telethon? I know you mentioned the date not too long ago, but let's mention it again.
All right. The date is November the 9th and November the 10th. And that is 15 hours, starts at 10 p.m. on Saturday evening through 1 p.m. Sunday afternoon. It is, we have our headliners, which are on from 10 p.m. until 2 a.m. in the morning. Then we have local and area talent. It's on from 2 until 6, and then gospel from 6 until 9. And then our headliners come back at 10 a.m. and go to 1. We also have times in there for meet and greet where they can actually meet the headliners, get their autographs, talk to them, and that happens in the lobby of the Carson Center, and everyone is invited to come and get the autographs. And again, I must say, Rob and Randy, the show is absolutely free. There's plenty of free parking there for you at the Carson Center, and we invite everyone to come and spend the night because it's a great place to visit and enjoy the telethon. And you can donate. They have a fishbowl where you, when you come in, if you're there at the Carson Center, you can donate in the fishbowl. Or if you are online on the internet, you may click on the telethonofstars.org. And I understand you have a link on your site.
Yes, we do.
That has the telethon where you can click and go to the telethon, and you can donate online at the Telethon of Stars. There's a donate button there that you can click on, and let me look at it real quick and tell you at the Telethon of Stars, it says, okay, what does it say here? Calendar, about headlines. There is a donation tab there. Yeah, it's on the left-hand side at the very top. It says donate now. You click on that, and if you're in Kentucky or in Illinois, Tennessee, or Missouri, whatever state you're in, the money goes back to that state to help the people in that area, the children and adults in that area who are handicapped.
Well, all right, that leads me into the other thing I find very interesting about you, Charlie, and that is you just recently released a children's book. Give us a little intro on how that came about for you.
Okay, well, I retired from Channel 6 TV in 2003, and obviously when you retire, you know, if you sit down and let the world pass you by, it's not very much a lot of fun. So I decided that I would do some consulting work. I do consulting work with Fleming Furniture. I also do a show with Danny Kelly called The Furniture Connection. It's seen on some cable systems as well as TV locally, Channel 6. And do some other things. And one of the things I not really had in the back of my mind that I wanted to write a book, but I happened to be on my deck one day, and I saw some movement out of my yard, and I saw some animals playing out there around a little pine tree. And so I kept looking at them, and I discovered that they were just little baby raccoons. They're called kits, the little baby raccoons are. So I thought, I'll go out there and see if I can sort of, you know, coax them to be friends with me. Well, every time I'd walk out the door or walk out in the yard, well, they would climb up the tree, and they would try to hide themselves so that I couldn't see them. And I kept doing that, and I finally got some cat food and put it in a little red Folgers coffee can, went out there and sort of rattled the can and put some on the ground. And finally, after some coaxing, I got them actually come down and eat the cat food. Well, you know, I thought, well, this is the end of that they're going to go away, and I won't see them anymore. So later on that afternoon, late in the afternoon, I went out there and I thought, I'm going to try to see if I can see them again. So I started shaking the cans and calling for them. I said, come on, little fellers. And guess what? Here they come running. Now, they were very skittish. They would come down the tree and look and go back up the tree. And I kept dropping the food, and they kept picking the food up and eating it. And they really wouldn't get very close to me, though. And after a few days of doing that, they finally, when I would rattle the can and call them, they would come running. And they actually would stand at my feet and actually eat food right there. And it was quite interesting because I even had my grandkids to come out, and they would even watch the meeting. They would come to you. So it was interesting. Well, I'd made notes all along about what their activities were, how they were acting, One of them seemed to be the leader or the smart one. The other one was a little shy, and one of them was sort of a mischievous one that fought the other one. So I actually gave them names, and I wrote notes about what was happening each day with these raccoons. And this went on for a period of time, 3-4 weeks, and finally I finally quit feeding them, and they finally left. And after gathering all these notes and looking at them, my wife and my kids thought, hey, it might be good to just write a little manuscript about what happened. So I actually turned those notes into a manuscript. And after reading it and after having some other folks read it, they said, they turned it to be a nice children's story. And it had a lesson in there because they were skittish, and we assumed that maybe their mom had told them to beware of strangers, because animals do that. Their parents teach them to beware of strangers and humans. And so the idea came to me, hey, beware of strangers and always listen to your mom. And so that was written into the book. And I actually took it to 2 or 3 local publishers as well as sending it off. And with a new author, unknown author, they're not going to take a lot of interest in that book. So I sort of put it on the shelf and left it there until January of this year. And I happened to be cleaning out some drawers, and I saw that manuscript, and I thought, I may try to rewrite this a little bit and see if I can get it published. Well, by that time, I realized that publishing now is a self-publishing entity, because you can't find a publisher that will actually take an unknown author unless it's something that's really fantastic. So I wrote to and called a few of these publishers, online publishers, and they obviously wanted not a lot of money, but it wasn't not a cheap endeavor to do, to get books printed and get some marketing out there. But I did find a company in Kuttawa, Kentucky, who had actually published Bill Cunningham's books, also Cliff Gill, I think they published his book. They are a publisher for Kentucky authors. And I took the book to Michelle Stone there, and she looked at it, and she said, I would like to do this. And so we talked about it, came to an agreed price, and we started out with the process of actually getting the book published. I had Rudy Holmes, who is a local artist, who has done a lot of work in Paducah at ENT, ears, nose, and throat office building, the doctors there. Also JP's downtown in Paducah. He has a lot of artwork there. And actually, he actually illustrated the book for me and turned the characters I had into personalities.
Were you happy with the way that Jipple, and Japple turned out?
Absolutely. Just fantastic. I mean, he captured the shyness, the smart, and the mischievous raccoons just perfectly. It was really something else.
It is something how those artists can do that. They can just bring out just
right
characters out of nowhere like that.
And I think Randy just got tongue-tied a little bit there. It was Jipple, Japple, and Jepple.
Yeah, you got it.
What did I say?
Now, people say, where did you come up with those names? Well, when I was a child, a little boy, I had 2 imaginary playmates, Jipple and Japple. And I don't know where they came from. I don't know how those names came up, other than the fact that I knew that they were imaginary friends of mine. And then when I wrote the book and saw the other raccoon, I said, he's got to have a name too. So we named him Jepple. So we got Jipple, Japple, and Jepple.
So what are you trying to convey to kids with this book? What's the moral to the story?
Well, the moral, I think, to the story is that, you have to listen to your parents. You have to listen to your mom. If your mom tells you something, pay attention. I know that all kids don't do that. They think they have more sense than their moms or their dads or their families, and they sometimes tend to go their own way. But I think it's important that they realize and understand what their parents are telling them is actually something that's beneficial to them, that will keep them from harm. And the other thing is beware of strangers, because we all know that in certain situations, kids can get in circumstances that cause them to become lax in their actual, looking at somebody and saying they're good or bad or whatever.
Right.
And I think that's important for children to realize that just because That stranger may have a magic can with food in it. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to not do them harm. So you got to sort of look at that, and I think that's the message I'm trying to convey.
Well, I think it's fantastic, all the work that you've done over the years with the telethon and coming up with this book. I mean, you've been such a light for all these children that that have special needs, and we're honored to have you on here.
Well, the thing about it is, I think that the children that we see and the adults that we see at the centers, at the telethon raises money for, I think everybody ought to realize that they can take $1, and our market is quite large, that we serve. In fact, we serve the entire world through the Internet, because this is actually streamed live on the Internet. And we do have donations from around the world. People that had been in Paducah and have left and now may be in London or maybe in some other part of the world, they actually see it and they actually donate. And we'd like to, if everybody just donated $1, I mean, we would have, in our market here, we would have, $1 million easily. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that everybody can contribute to something and make themselves feel good by helping the children and adults with disabilities. We're all very fortunate that we live in a country we do, and that we do have the people who have the ability to donate and help other people, and I think that's an important lesson, just like the raccoon lesson with teaching children to listen to their parents everywhere as strangers.
Well, I left this out, Charlie. Where can that book be purchased at?
Okay, the book can be purchased on Amazon.com. It can be purchased from the McClanahan Books website, which is kybooks.com, or they can purchase it from my website, which is Markat Books, which is MARKAT books.net. And we hope to have it in some local outlets. It takes some time for an unknown author to get a book in Books A Million or books in Barnes & Noble. And there will be an audiobook out that will be available on iTunes and on audible.com coming up. I was hoping to have it this weekend, but I ran into a couple of problems, and I'm having to recut some of the audio, and I'm actually doing that audio. So it will be available as an audiobook as well.
Now, I got one final serious question for you, Charlie. Are you ever worried that Jipple, Japple, and Jeppel will show back up seeking royalties?
There is a possibility of that happening. I do have a good attorney, so anyway, I don't know what they would use, but in my next book, I'm going to try to address bullying, and I don't want them to come back and bully me into getting them residuals on this book. But
pay them off with cat food.
Yeah, right.
Well, Charlie, thank you very much for taking time out tonight and joining us on the show.
Hey, Rob and Randy, it's appreciated. I love it very much, and you guys have a great year, and be sure and watch the telethon, and I think you're going to come down, right?
Yeah, I'll be there.
All right, we appreciate it.
The 25th Hour Radio Show.